You're listening to The Watchers, a show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey watch TV and movies about too many fucking snakes. I can't. I cannot. I'm sorry. I blocked that out.
Just a heads up, the first few minutes of this, we talk a lot about snakes and spiders and rats. If you're somebody who has a phobia of any of those things, you're going to want to skip ahead. I would say a good 10 minutes.
Yeah. Maggots too.
They probably will come up again,
Yeah.
just so you know, but we spend a lot of time focused directly on them. So just so you know, if that's something that's really going to ruin your day, you might want to skip ahead a few minutes.
Or your breakfast.
Skip your breakfast or skip ahead.
Yeah.
It was a lot of snakes.
10,000 live snakes. I have blocked that from my memory. There's a lot of this movie that I didn't remember, and then when I watched it, I was like, oh, I've seen this 1,000 times. I know exactly the tonality and the inflection and everything that's about to happen. But I had blocked out the snakes.
It's so funny because I was saying to you...
We watched The Craft.
Oh, we watched The Craft. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Jodie. And that movie has too many snakes.
It does have a lot of snakes. The thing about snakes is...
You can't train snakes, Andrea.
Yeah, but it wasn't like 10,000 like copperheads.
10,000 snakes. There was a 10-foot boa in there.
That's pretty cool. I was saying to you, it seems like people are we are either like genetically, biologically, evolutionarily, like bred or whatever to be fearful of snakes, or you're somebody who fucking loves snakes and you're like a snake person. And I'm really neither. I'm not afraid of snakes. I wouldn't like to get bitten by a poisonous one, but like whenever, like when Fear Factor was a show and they would make people get in the snake box, like I could get in the snake box, it would be fine.
Oh my god, you're an alien to me.
I wouldn't prefer it. However, I also read that the maggots were real.
Yeah, but there was like one toilet full of maggots.
That is enough to end my life.
So what are they going to do to you? They're not going to do anything to you. The snakes can bite you.
Yeah, but they don't want to. And if it's like you're not going to die. I guess maybe 10,000 snake bites might kill you, but it would have to be like a concerted effort of all of the snakes joining together to bite you all at once.
Even one snake bite hurts.
Yeah. That would probably hurt. I just think like I would be fine. I would be fine. But
oh my god.
But I wouldn't hold one maggot.
Okay.
Like
wow.
Genuinely, if the option was get in the snake box from Fear Factor or hold a maggot, I would jump in the snake box in a second.
This is the least I've understood you as a person since we met.
They're so gross. It's like
they're gross, but they're like tiny little things. They're so small.
I was just about to say with a very different inflection, they're so small.
People eat them.
People eat snakes too, I think.
Probably, yeah, they do. Oh, yeah. No, the snakes. I can't.
This is going to be the whole podcast. Is both of us trying to rationalize and understand the other one here.
And like, I didn't love the rats or the roaches, but like, as someone who lived in New York City for a decade, you know, whatever. It's gross.
I'd also rather hold a rat than a roach. I'd rather hold a snake than a maggot. I'd rather hold a... Now, roach and maggot are the same to me. The problem, though, is the roaches, I think, were computer generated. The bugs in general looked like shit, so I wasn't afraid of them.
Well, here's the thing, though. Roaches are faster than maggots.
Both is bad. Both is bad in that case.
Because
roaches are faster and they want to get away from you, I think, right?
Yeah, generally. See, now you've got me stuck on would I rather hold a rat or a roach?
A rat. 100%. I would elect to.
Well,
they're like mice, but big.
Okay, a pet rat, yes.
Oh, if we're thinking about, which part of my brain am I thinking with? Am I thinking with the rational one that knows that like a street rat carries disease?
That's the brain I'm thinking with. So I'm not thinking about somebody's sweet pet rat that they've like hand trained. That's like their little friend. Like, that's fine. They have creepy tails, but that's fine. But when I think of rats, I think of New York City street rats that are like the size of large cats and are disgusting. So
I still think if if somebody was like, you have to pick one of those up, and I'm just on the street and there's like a gun to my head, I'm going to pick up the roach because a street rat might bite me, give me a disease, and I die. And I don't think that's going to happen with a roach. It's just going to be gross.
Yeah.
And but my instinct is reach for the rat if I'm not thinking about it.
I don't know. Roaches, like, you can step on them. And
I actually never stepped on a roach, but I think they probably crunch.
Oh, they're disgusting. Don't get me wrong.
Bad. I mean, you could step on a rat too if you really wanted. Isn't it Elise Myers who has a story about accidentally?
I need a minute to think about stepping on a rat. No, but like, oh, this is hard. Okay, so one of my traumatic childhood moments was when my pet gerbil bit me on the nose and wouldn't let go.
No.
And so I think I've had a distrust of all small rodents since then. I had a scar. I think it's gone now, but it like held on with its little teeth.
Would you like to know a fact about me that I think you might be delighted by?
Of course.
That is related to this? Is
of course
that in addition to having a pet raccoon, we also I had 22 guinea pigs at one point. We raised guinea pigs and brought them to guinea pig shows.
That's amazing.
So that might also be why.
I wish I'd known you when I was a child, because we had guinea pigs. We had one big guinea pig that we found out after we got it when there were tiny babies in the cage the next morning that we bought a pregnant guinea pig.
It's the oldest trick in the book. That's how they get you.
Oh my God. And we had gerbils and hamsters and but we did not have 22. That's impressive. But if I'd known you, I could have given you the baby guinea pigs because my mom did not want them. See, I had those little rodent pets as a kid too. But I think the one that bit me on the nose really kind of ruined it for me. Like, I don't trust squirrels.
It's fair. And they have awful little teeth.
Yeah, they really do. Especially when they're attached to your face.
The problem is they're not very sharp, but they're powerful.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so painful. It's like the thing of like, if you cut your hand with a very sharp knife, it doesn't really hurt. It's like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, no, I've never forgotten that. So, like, I will never put an animal that I don't know near my face.
I mean, I think that's generally a good rule.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised how many people break that rule.
I know. I have the sweetest dog on planet Earth, but when people want to meet him on the street and he's small, so they want to get down near his face, I'm always like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
You don't know that he doesn't realize he has teeth in his mouth.
No. And like the people that think they're fucking Snow White and like feed peanuts to squirrels and stuff in the park, I'm like, those are rats with fluffy tails and they will bite you. I know that's probably you, but
it's who I want to be.
Yeah, it's who I want to be too, but I'm a realist.
I mean, I am going to be like, when I inevitably die, it's because I've convinced myself that like a wolf dog or something understands me on a spiritual level and we're going to connect, and then it eats me. Like, I am going to die jumping into the polar bear tank at the zoo. Like,
sure,
it is going to happen.
Yeah.
I understand though that that's a failing on my part.
Right. Well, and weirdly, the larger animals scare me less. Like,
I kind of get that. You can see them coming.
Like, I feel like I could make friends with like a black bear.
Totally.
But a squirrel scares me.
They're less predictable.
They're so shifty.
Well, and they seem less, because like a bear is almost a person. A bear is like a person with a lot of fur. And so you feel like
they stand on their hind legs.
Yeah, like a people.
You see them like playing in people's backyard pools and stuff.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, but squirrels are shifty. I do not trust them.
There's a wolf sanctuary. It's a wolf dog sanctuary. I should be very clear. There are a couple in Jersey, but there's one, Howling Woods, that I've been to, and they're all hybrids. But you can go on a tour where you get to stand inside their enclosure, and they'll come up and you can pet them and take pictures, and they give you kisses. And then the thing that makes me cry is at the end you start the group of visitors starts a howl. And all of the wolf dogs in the sanctuary, even the ones that you can't see because they're too far away and in their own, all start up, and you get to do a howl, like a pack howl with the wolves. And it is
That would make me cry.
It makes me cry. It is the best moment.
Wow.
Like, it's so good.
That's
good.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, I relate. I feel like I could hug a bear and it would be okay.
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah.
But a squirrel would bite me and give me rabies.
It is funny because I think when it comes to like things that people often deem irrational, you and I are often divided. Where it'll be like a thing that you're irrational about that I'm like, come on, or me.
Yeah.
It's not often that we're both like, actually, I think I could hug a bear. I wonder what it is about us that this is the point where we intersect.
Did you have a lot of stuffed animals as a kid?
If you had to guess. If I had a lot of stuffed animals as a kid.
Oh, God. Yeah. No, I was a huge stuffed animal person as a child.
So much.
I had them all over my bed.
I still buy, I'm not like a weird stuffed animal adult, you know how some people are, but I do buy those, I have a small collection of, do you know what Squishables are?
Mm-hmm.
I have their Jersey Devil and their Gritty and Baphomet and a couple others, but I feel like that's different. And I also have any stuffed Jersey Devil that's ever been made, but that's also different.
And I have no judgment against stuffed animal adults because I feel like life is really hard.
Yeah, and if that's the
thing, you're not hurting anyone.
Right. You have stuffed animals. I have, I guess, podcasts, I think, are what I collect and just like cling to. It's just, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I tuck myself in at night with.
I have a huge collection of yarn.
Yeah, we all have our thing. We
all have our things.
I wonder how much of this actually ends up in the podcast this week.
Collect tote bags. Like, come on.
How many tote bags full of tote bags do you have, Jodie?
So many.
I used to have I was able to recognize that my need to keep every bag comes from one of my mental illnesses, and I've been able to I've been able to stop collecting bags.
Yeah.
Bags and good boxes. My roommate Kitsy and I will often be like, one of us has to help the other one. Box. Be like, we gonna do anything with this? This is a good box.
Oh my God. So one of the things I think my best friend and I really bonded over was the fact that we both appreciate containers.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Container Store.
No, I was just gonna ask.
Oh my God. I can't go in there.
Container Store podcast? I don't know what that would be, but I want to talk about it.
I think we should, because maybe we could get them to sponsor us and they'd give us free containers.
That's all I've ever wanted.
I love the Container Store so much.
So much.
Oh my God.
All right, we are 17 minutes into this podcast.
We're talking about the Container Store.
And this will be a good note for our listeners. When I say we're 17 minutes into this podcast, they'll have a good idea of how much
we talked about containers.
Yeah, based on how many minutes they're into this podcast.
If you're also into the Container Store, let us know.
Please.
You know.
Also, tag us in pictures of your favorite containers.
Oh my God. Honestly,
genuinely, I'm not joking. That's not a joke. I would love that.
Okay. Before we start talking about the movie that we're here to talk about, I just wanted to read a quick, I wouldn't say correction, but sort of like additional information that one of our listeners sent to me, a friend of mine, that was unfortunately means we have to give Zach Braff a little bit more credit than we did for the medicine cabinet image. I know.
No.
I really wish that we didn't have to give him credit, but I think so. And this is a good point that I did not realize. And another good point that I should have realized. The first one is that the muscle relaxer is often prescribed in tandem with lithium to prevent the tremor side effects. Okay. So it wasn't just randomly thrown in there.
Maybe.
I think we have to give him this.
Could be a happy accident.
Yeah. Or it could be that it's commonly prescribed with lithium, which is, prominently featured.
But that's just the methocarbamol. That's what it's called. That's just one of a million, right?
Also, and this person didn't say if this was true, but they said if the doses are different on the bottles, he's not just throwing out the old meds as his meds are adjusted. Because that's true. As someone, if you've been on any psych meds, you know that, you'll have, the 37.5 tablets and the 75s and the 50s. And, as they fluctuate to try to figure it out.
And I even take, this is my, I'm trying to decide if I need to offer this to help Zach Braff's case. But it is like, for example, my Adderall, I have 2 different doses that I take 2 different times a day.
So unfortunately,
from personal experience, and I'm still judging.
I know.
God damn it.
I know. So thank you to that listener / friend of mine who pointed that out.
That is helpful information. And
yeah. And especially the multiple dose thing, I probably should have realized in the moment, but it's still an image done for effect, but I think there's justifications for the decisions.
Here's what I think. I think it's an image done for effect that we have been able to find a justification for. I'm not necessarily ready to say that that's what Zach Braff was thinking at the time.
I mean, the antibiotic is a bit of a wild card, but
I think he was just like, we'll just put a bunch of bottles in, and like, and this is me thinking as Zach Braff, I understand they can't all be antipsychotic meds or like psychiatric meds and so some of them should be things like doxycycline, I guess.
Yeah, but I also think that like, if we go back to the list, which I don't want to do, some of them are pain meds, which the amount of pain meds in there, it was a bit much.
That's what I mean.
It's not implied that he has like a opiate addiction.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
The meds don't. Many of those meds don't make sense.
Many
no
don't
matter
make
how
sense.
You slice it.
But some of them do.
Yes.
There are reasons for some of them. So
yes, that's such a good point, because it's like, we aren't supposed to assume that he has a drug problem.
Right.
We're supposed to think that his father has been over medicating him. Those are 2 different things. And
yeah, they are.
Is his dad? I also didn't look to see. You probably can't see who the prescribing doctor is, but I would be interested to see if you can, specifically the pain meds.
I bet. Yeah, that's a good point. Except I really want to be done with Garden State.
Yeah.
So I will probably look at some point. But let's talk about The Craft.
Yeah.
It was such a fun experience. It's like, oh, wait, you have to do the describing this week.
Oh, that's right.
You have to give us a summary.
Yeah, my summary is this movie is vibes. Like, it really, there are 2 ways to watch this movie, and you can watch it in a way that is just vibes. I was talking to someone who's a few years younger than us, who is married to a bisexual goth, and who has not seen yeah, exactly.
Well done.
Yeah, it's a bi wife guy and bisexual goth wife.
Amazing.
So it's like they're fantastic couple. But she's never seen The Craft. And so he was like, should we watch it? And I was like, it's really hard to say. Also, she feels about snakes and spiders and stuff the way you do. So that was like a big, but he was like, what's it about? And I was like, it's kind of just like 90s witchy vibes. Like, it really, like, you don't watch this movie to think about what it's about, which we are going to talk about.
I know.
It's really the first time I've watched this movie with a critical eye in my entire life.
Same.
It is about Sarah. She's new in town. She and her father and his new wife have actually don't know if it's his new wife.
Yeah, it's implied because she calls her Jenny, but I think that might just be something she does.
Yeah, they move from San Francisco to LA. She very quickly becomes friends with these 3 girls who are witches. Mm-hmm. They are looking for a 4th witch because you need a witch from each to represent each direction on the compass. Mm-hmm. Because that is how you become powerful as a witch, is to form a coven of 4 and ask Manon, who is a fictional deity, or not even deity. He's everything.
Yeah, he's a made up god.
But he's like a Wiccan god in this. Mm-hmm. He's like the Wiccan god in this movie.
Yeah.
And each girl has her own major struggle. I will detail them quickly. Mm-hmm. Bonnie, played by the stunning, as always, Neve Campbell, even though she's supposed to be a monster in this movie. She has scars, and people think she's ugly, and she thinks she's ugly because of these scars. We'll get into how they characterize her throughout the movie. There is Rochelle. Her biggest issue, understandably so, is racism.
Yeah.
There is a horrific racist in this movie, played by Christine Taylor.
Marsha Brady.
Played by Marsha Brady. And so that's what she's dealing with. There is Fairuza Balk. Her biggest issue is poverty.
And her gross stepfather.
Who her mother stays with in this movie because of poverty. And then there's Sarah, whose biggest problem is, I think it's loss. Because, like, the thing that she
but that's not what she asks for.
No. This movie is be careful what you wish for. This movie is 100% be careful what you wish for. So they form this coven. She's a natural witch. It's important to... the other three have been studying witchcraft. They visit this really cool shop that I was obsessed with as a kid.
Me too.
With this very witchy woman, Loria. And she's a natural witch, though. She doesn't have to study. And so once they bring her in, it's sort of like it is implied that all four of them together become powerful, but so much of it has to do with Sarah's natural powers, kind of like magnifying everybody else, which it's important to note Nancy has a problem with and is jealous of. So when they form their coven, they each make a wish, sort of like set an intention.
It's like an ask.
That is related to their biggest issue. So Bonnie asks for beauty outside as well as in. Rochelle asks, it's so funny because the movie tries to do this thing where they word them in these ways that seem lovely on the outside and then it gets twisted. Rochelle asks for the ability to not to hate the people who hate her. I forget exactly what the wording is. Sarah asks for love. And she says, especially from Chris Hooker, who's the scumbag football player bully, which she knows is an issue, whatever. She basically casts a love spell accidentally. Or not accidentally. And then Nancy asks for all the power of Menel.
Just the escalation is still funny to me. It's
exactly.
I want this boy to like me. I want to be pretty. I want to stop dealing with racist assholes. I want all the power in the world.
All of it. Which is how you know that Nancy is going to be our antagonist in this movie, which I struggle with. I'm taking too long. But we're almost there.
Yeah.
So then all of these things start coming true to some degree. Bonnie's scars do disappear.
Yeah.
Christine Taylor starts losing her hair.
In a really gross way.
Yeah, it's because she specifically makes a really racist comment about Rochelle's hair.
Yeah.
And so that's how it manifests in Christine Taylor.
Right.
Chris is obsessed with Sarah. She's able to get him to carry her books, and he's sitting with them at mass instead of with the boys, and he's showing up at her house at odd hours. And Nancy's stepfather or whatever dies, and he leaves her
$175,000,
which is $344,000 in 2023 time, which is still a lot of money.
Yeah,
but it's not.
Yeah,
it's not life-changing forever.
Right.
It's certainly it's either life-changing for a little while, or you could use that money to be a little more comfortable for quite a while.
Yeah.
But whatever, fine. And then is that everybody? That's everybody. Then they invoke the spirit, which the woman at the occult shop or whatever warned them against because it's very dangerous. And these are teen girls. It's important to remember these are teen girls who have just recently discovered these powers.
Yeah.
They call the corners, and while they're doing it, which is they're invoking all the power of Menel, Nancy calls Menel into her body. She gets struck by lightning.
Yeah.
It works, which I think is kind of cool. They wake up on the beach, and the other three girls wake up, and Nancy is literally walking on water. It is.
I forgot how funny that scene was.
So
not intentionally, but
no. It's 1996.
She's floating.
The graphics are not
no.
the visuals are not great in this movie.
Oof.
Except for the 10,000 snakes. Those look really real. Because they are real. But she's so powerful, and then because of this, Or I guess we find out later. I shouldn't say that yet. Then all of their spells, which seem to be working for them, start to twist. Some of them in really like obvious ways, like Sarah.
Yeah.
Chris assaults her. He's so obsessed with her. He's showing up all hours of the night. He won't leave her alone. There's one scene where she's on the phone and he says, "You look like you need someone to talk to."
Yeah.
Which reminds me of Scream.
Yeah.
And he physically assaults her. He tries to sexually assault her.
Yeah.
She runs away.
Yeah.
So that's an obvious one.
Yeah.
All of this starts to warp. It becomes clearly like an issue that they're all receiving what they've sown or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
It comes back. Whatever they learn, whatever you put out comes back threefold, and that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Nancy has become so power hungry that it's becoming dangerous. People are dying. She kills Chris. And Sarah tries to bind her. She does a binding spell. But Nancy knows because she's so powerful. She and the other girls start like tormenting Sarah and visiting her in her dreams. They show up at her house and tell her that her parents, her dad and his wife have died in a plane crash. She sees it on the news. Nancy slits Sarah's wrists for real.
Yeah.
And tries to kill her and says she's gonna because we know that Sarah has previously tried to kill herself.
Right.
So Nancy's plan is to kill Sarah and frame it as if she killed Chris and then herself. Sarah then calls in the power of Menon in the same way that Nancy did, but because Sarah's a good witch, her powers, she's able to use them for good. They have a cool knockdown, drag out fight, the two of them, because Rochelle and Bonnie have run away because Sarah glamours a mirror, does a spell on a mirror so that they both look ugly, which is the worst thing that can happen for a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah.
They run away. The two of them have a knockdown, drag out fight. Sarah is able to bind Nancy. It breaks her brain. Nancy is committed to a hospital, completely delusional.
Yep.
The last scene of the movie, Rochelle and Bonnie show up to ask Sarah if Sarah still has any powers, because Nancy and Rochelle do not. And they're like, I actually think the scene is kind of sweet in a very teen way, because they're like, if you ever want to call the corners or whatever.
Yeah.
And Sarah's like, nah, I'm good. And they're like, you probably don't have any powers anyway.
Yeah.
And as they're walking away, we see that Sarah is still extremely powerful. She brings in a storm and
she throws a tree branch at him.
She throws a giant tree branch at them.
Yeah.
And is like, careful, you don't want to end up like Nancy. That part's not sweet.
No.
And that's the end of the movie.
There we go.
That's all of it.
Yeah.
I think I did it.
You did it. Yeah. Yeah. I just want to point out, we're talking about how they're teenagers in this movie. No one is older. I mean, no one in this movie is younger than 21.
These are old women.
Fairuza Balk was 21. Nev Campbell was 22. Robin Tunney was 23. Rachel True was 29. 29! Skeet Ulrich was 25. Christine Taylor was 24. And Breckenmeyer was 21.
I think because of that, the problematic elements of this movie about the way that they I don't know how to explain this, but it was really the fact that this is the first time I really thought about this movie as being like, oh, these are four young girls who want to be pretty and have boys like them.
Yeah. It's basically Teen Witch, but a lot darker.
Yeah, it's the stakes of this movie are some of them are so big. People do die in this movie, and these girls do become really powerful, but they use it in yeah, I don't know. I'm more conflicted about this movie than I expected to be.
Well, and so I read something, not to jump to kind of the big thoughts this quickly, but I did read something where we'll talk about the remake later, but there's the remake Craft Legacy. And part of the reason that Zoe Lister-Jones, part of her agenda with the remake was that in the original movie, the girls are kind of fighting each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's she wanted to make a version where they support each other and the enemy is external, right? Because in this case, the enemy is external, but they go at each other instead.
Right.
You know? And so that was the thing I noticed this time that I didn't originally. But I think that's because teen girls are assholes, as we have established from day one.
That's the thing. Like, there's something.
Yeah, no, this is like, as someone who we've talked about this, who was like really badly bullied growing up, like the girls were so much worse than the boys. And they're fucking evil at that age. Like, especially in middle school, but even in high school, you know, it's like, I think it wouldn't have rung true to me in the 90s if they had stood by each other and it had been like a girl power coven situation. That would have been like, come on.
Yeah, this is what I'm struggling with, because this is a movie written by grown men, and that is very obvious in a lot of ways. But at the same time, like you said, teen girls are assholes.
Yeah.
And like Christine Taylor being just like so shitty and so racist to Rochelle is not unbelievable.
Not at all.
Like it just isn't.
And I do think that teen girls may be less assholes now than they were then. I do think that there's been a lot of work done with, like, I've known, you know, my cousin's kids when they were teenagers were definitely not assholes in the same way. Well, maybe they were. But it seems to me, it's hard to say, but it seems to me like there's been a lot of work done around bullying to at least sort of.
I think it's a pendulum swing thing, because cyberbullying made.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we know that it was and is in many ways worse for that reason, because you can't just go home.
Right.
But I think because of that, it seems like, and again, we're two old people who are so far removed from school, but also as two people who have, I don't know. I'm like.
Yeah. No, I know. I feel kind of weird about it. I do think, though, that in the 90s, like, literally, if you went to your parent and said, I'm being bullied in school, and your parent went to the teacher and said, my kid is being bullied, the teacher would often say, your kid needs to toughen up.
Right.
That's going to happen. Like, I can't do anything.
Yeah. I think maybe that's the, like, social conversation around bullying has certainly changed.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can say that because that thing actually literally happened. My mom went and the teacher was like, I mean, you know, kids are kids. Kids are mean. Like, she needs to fight back. And like, my mom was like, you can't do anything.
You can't.
The teacher was kind of like, no, not really. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. So I do think it would be unrealistic to expect a movie from the 90s to have sort of the, like, girls supporting each other vibe that we want to put on it from 2023.
Right. Yeah, that never stuck out to me.
No.
Before. So I really, like, felt for Nancy this time through in a big way. Big way.
Yeah.
Her level of, like, poverty and what she's dealing with is so extreme. Like, she comes in from the rain and it's still raining in her house.
In her house, I know. Yeah, no, I felt the same way. I also felt like, I mean, a lot has been said already about Fairuza Balk's performance in this. I think that this movie doesn't get anywhere near the attention that it did without how amazing she is in this.
She's great.
But I think she gets a lot of attention for the sort of, like, over the top, like, really dramatic scenes. But the subtle moments where you can see on her face the sort of, like, the jealousy, the being uncomfortable with what she looks like, and you know, the bravado that she's trying to project to cover all of that up.
Right.
She plays that so well. Like, that is what really made me feel for her, was like, not the sort of dramatics of it, but like, you can see how hard she's trying to put on this face of like, fuck you all, I don't care. And it's like, you know, she cares.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What kind of school are they attending?
It's a Catholic school.
It's not a public school.
No, it's a Catholic school.
Are they?
Can I blow your mind?
This is never, I don't know why. I do know what made me think of this, which is, how is she so poor and going to that school? Catholic school in Jersey is
Scholarships.
You think so?
Yeah. I knew kids without a lot of money that would go to Catholic school.
Okay.
Because they would get some sort of scholarship of some kind.
Do you think her mom and stepdad are like
true?
Is Nancy applying for a scholarship?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I don't know, but I need to tell you something.
What?
The high school used as a location. Do you know what else it was used for?
No.
Heather's.
Oh, that's so good.
Do you know what else it was used for?
Oh, what else?
Better Off Dead.
It's one of those schools, huh?
Verdugo Hills High School. Better Off Dead, not another teen movie, Christine. But most importantly, Heather's.
Heather's. Oh, I love that. I love to know that.
Yeah. It's not a Catholic school by like in real life, so they made it a Catholic school.
It's just a big, beautiful campus that is crazy.
Yeah, very California high school. Yeah, I was so excited when I saw that. What is the most important part of this movie for you to talk about?
Truly, what it did for teen witches.
Okay. Wait, I have a question before.
What about you?
Okay, no, I have a question about this. Did teen witches grow up into rock women? Like women that carry rocks around?
I don't believe in witchcraft.
I believe in rocks.
But I am a magpie. And I know that I am because of the craft.
Yeah.
Because all I wanted when I was, and I didn't believe in it when I was a kid, but you bet your ass, me and my 3 best friends had a quote unquote, we called it the Four Corners Club. Like I remember I have very specific memories of going to the local library after I was in 5th grade when this movie came out, going to the local library after this movie came out and like surreptitiously checking out books about witchcraft. And the thing about it is like, my mom didn't give a shit what I was reading. I was very unsupervised, as we've learned. But for some reason, it felt like a level of rebellion to secretly check out the witchcraft books, like in a way that I think is very formative to like just me as a person, as a child.
Yeah.
And I still like, I am a rock person. I'm also like, shout out to the Lunar Fair, which is this local New Jersey run twice monthly, new moon, full moon night fair run by a coven of witches in New Jersey.
Amazing.
And I love them so much. And they do these subscription boxes. They're not subscription boxes. Doesn't matter. They do these like mail order boxes where they will send you just cool shit. And again, I don't practice witchcraft.
Yeah.
But I buy the box every time it comes out because I love this stuff. And it is a direct line from this movie. So to answer your question in one word, yes.
So I'm currently not on the East Coast. And I went to like a state park with a friend of mine last week. And you bet I brought home a rock.
Yeah, you did.
Like it was really cute though. So there's this river out where I'm at. That's a very like wide, flat river. And when you go to the state park, there's a collection of like flat skipping stones with a little sign. And like it shows you how to skip stones. And there's just a collection of good skipping stones, which I thought was the sweetest thing ever.
That means that, like, and when other people are there, they look for little skipping stones and add them to the. Oh, I love that. That's so nice.
Yeah. So I took a stone. I wasn't supposed to do that, but whatever.
I think that's fine.
Yeah. So
the river will keep making them.
Yeah. But I was obviously not in 5th grade when this movie came out. I was 21. But I was either working at the video store or at Barnes & Noble. And I think I was at the video store, but then about 6 months later was at Barnes & Noble. And I definitely would spend quiet times in the store in the witchcraft aisle looking at books of spells. And it was when I got really into astrology. And I was definitely past the stage of my life where I would have suddenly gone into like a goth phase. I was more the like crystal hippie deadhead at that age. But it's all in the same universe.
Yeah. My like little group of 4 friends who again were the Four Corners Club,
Did you each have an element?
Yeah. I don't remember specific, but we were lined up based on who we were most like. It wasn't like which element we were most like, because we were obsessed with the movie. That's what got us into the rest of it. And that's what I was going to say is my friend who was the Nancy of the group was also our more like goth friend. She was also the friend who like in our breakdown of like the music we listened to, she was our Marilyn Manson friend. She like, she was obsessed. And I was always more, what happened?
Which one were you?
Oh, I was Sarah, because I was the most like,
you were the good witch.
I was the good witch, but it's because I was also the least like, I've always been this one. I've always been the one who's on the edge of whatever trouble people were getting into. Yeah. Like it was more that, but I also, was way more like into buying like candles and cool crystals and shit like you were saying, than I would have been into the more like wearing upside down crosses and dressing in all black. Yeah. It just so.
And casting spells so that people fall out of windows.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is this movie. So it's like the fact that this movie and Empire Records came out the same year, right?
One after the other.
What, like directly after the other?
Empire Records and then this. Yeah. About a year.
Right. Because I think Empire Records is on or The Craft is like a coming soon to home video trailer on the Empire Records VHS, I think. I think that's right. And
because like, Robin Tunney had to wear that horrible wig. The wig is so bad.
It's really
They couldn't have given her bangs.
Something.
Like that hairline?
Yeah, like there's a lot they could have done to unwig that wig. It is bad.
Yeah, it's really bad. So there's actually, I love research. I found a Time article about the legacy of The Craft, and it's like the rise of teens interested in witchcraft after it came out, because there was a huge surge.
Well, it's funny because
we were not alone.
Think of that like genre as just kind of like, it's always been around, but it really hasn't. And it did start with this because like, maybe I'm going to spoil what you're going to say so we could cut this, but like Buffy, Charmed, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, all of that is post The Craft.
Right. Well, and so there's this whole thing that about Charmed having ripped off The Craft.
No, it's the same it's literally the same theme song.
It's the same font too.
Is it?
Uh-huh.
I've never noticed that.
Yeah.
Wow.
The creators of The Craft have noticed it.
That is blatant.
It's blatant. So I just want to, I know everybody loves when I read things, but I just want to read this little bit from the Time article because I think it centers the conversation. So it says, The Craft appeared at a moment of almost eerie cultural synchronicity. The 70s had offered a smorgasbord of films and TV shows with occult topics like The Exorcist and Circle of Fear, but the 80s was curiously devoid of them, partly due perhaps to the rising profile of Jerry Falwell's Moral Majority, which crusaded against drug use and Hollywood heathenry. Simultaneously, the Satanic Panic, roughly spanning the late 1980s through the mid-90s, was characterized by virulent rumors of satanic ritual abuse, including sexual assault, impregnation, and even sacrifice of infants to the devil. Many of the narratives resemble scenes from the 1968 film Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
Virtually all of these stories were debunked following an FBI task force investigation, which published its findings in 1992, but not before the panic spread via mass media, and many lives were ruined by false accusations. One more bit. I just skipped a paragraph because the next part says, although the Satanic Panic had largely wound down by the start of the 90s, hints of it appeared in the media that came after. The decade that saw a number of iconic occult-themed narratives, with two especially influential textbooks bookending the decade: 1990's surreal cerebral Twin Peaks, informed by Tibetan mysticism, Jungian symbolism, and Native American folklore, and 1999's indie phenomenon, The Blair Witch Project, a hyper-real yet psychological terror that conjured deep-seated fears of witches in the woods. In between, the burgeoning interest ushered in a new world of online fringe communities and subcultures, including the contemporary witchcraft movement, which would come to have a significant influence on Hollywood storytelling. So I do think that, like, this shit doesn't come out of nowhere, right? That's kind of what I'm trying to get at with all this reading, is like, there's a lineage. And for anyone that's interested in the Satanic Panic itself, the podcast You're Wrong About by Sarah Marshall. She is writing a book on the Satanic Panic, and she does go into it quite a bit in various episodes of that podcast, which is awesome. So it does really kind of fit into where society was at the moment. It also says, like, the craft dropped right into this teeming cauldron of witch narratives, soon to be followed by Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Practical Magic. What set the craft apart from these more lighthearted stories was the rather dark trajectory of its storyline. This was no comedy or fairy tale, but a bona fide horror movie. So, like, I think that's why it appealed to so many of the people that I knew, you know, because it was like, you know, lighthearted witchery was not the vibe in the 90s. It was like, you know, pump up the volume, but witches. Or Heathers, but witches.
Witches, yeah. I do just, it's funny because I didn't, even when I was a kid, this movie didn't feel like a horror movie to me, though.
No, me either.
It just felt cool.
Yeah.
Like, it just kind of felt like these girls are cool. Like, and maybe that's bad.
Yeah. No,
it's just like,
it was relatable, right? Like, everybody, I mean, maybe not everybody, but like, the slut shaming of Skeet Ulrich's the character Chris, that was real, right? There's always the weird girl that gets picked on by the like football players, but also like he secretly like sleeps with her. Like, there's all of this stuff that just really rang true to like
it
actual
really is
high school experience.
That's what it is. I think it doesn't feel like a horror movie to me. It feels like
high school movie.
A high school movie with witches.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
A 90s high school movie with witches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. It also, like, I said before you started reading the article that there's all this witch stuff that is post the craft, and that's true. But as you kind of pointed out, it is like witch stuff has been around obviously forever. Like, that's not, you know, but it is just a different approach. And the idea of it being like empowering for the women practicing it is definitely.
Yeah. Well, and so interestingly,
because of the craft.
Yeah. And interestingly, because, you know, you mentioned this movie was directed by Andrew Fleming and co-written by Peter Filardi, to not female witches, two white men. There's some things about that are sort of noticeable, but I would say that not as much as I would expect from that. And I think part of that, I read an interview with the two of them as well as one of the producers. And like the co-writer was, so rewind. The co-writer, Peter Filardi, had previously worked on Flatliners, right? And in the interview, he says, at the time I was immersed in the world of teen Satanism and that volatile cocktail of hallucinogens, metal, and magic. I knew a lot about how magic worked and where it came from. I had become fascinated by Ricky Casso, a pioneer in teen Satanism. So, like, he's into this shit, or was at the time. This is not just like, I want to make this movie about teen witches. It's like, he's really... He says, I remember telling Doug, who was one of the producers, that magic is historically a weapon of the underclass. It was originally practiced by people of the heath or whatever, or heathens, poor people without the power of a king, army, or church behind them. Our characters could not be popular, beautiful overlords of their school. For real magic to work, they would have to be outsiders.
But you cast Nev Campbell, so
I know.
I mean, let's...
Yeah. Real magic requires need, right? So he's actually... You know,
I like that.
I do too. He really like had his.
You and I are suckers, though, for anybody who can frame a conversation of being like, actually, it's about the underdog. Actually, it's about poor people.
Actually, it's about history. Yeah, and I've done my research. Yeah, no, I know.
I also read that they worked with. They worked with like a Wiccan practitioner.
It's referred to as a witch consultant in this article.
That rules. That rules.
So yeah, they had a witch consultant, Pat Devon. She's credited in the movie as a technical consultant, but she was really there to make it real. He says, I wanted real Wiccans to see it and say, that's not offensive to me. That's kind of what it's like. The whole idea was to make up stuff because the god they refer to in the movie is something we made up because it might have been offensive to people if we'd used people's real gods. But yeah, so they had the...
And like the power itself isn't inherently bad, and they make it a point to say that the issue is how Nancy abuses it.
Right.
Like all of that is like at the forefront of the conflict of this movie. It's not about witchcraft being inherently evil. Yeah, and on the screenplay itself, he didn't use a quote-unquote witch consultant. That was when they got to the movie part. This is interesting, his list of references. He says, I used Scott Cunningham's book Earth Power as one of my touchstones, Goddesses in Every Woman by Jean Bolin, Joseph Campbell's Power of Myth. And then he says, Holes Live Through This was spot on for me musically while writing The Craft. It's that raw power of adolescent pain. I still think of The Craft whenever I hear doll parts or softer softest. Apologies to Courtney Love. That's amazing.
Yeah.
This is another movie. I know that all movies do that. Like, no, I know that many movies do this, and oftentimes it is intentional, and sometimes it is just because we understand how story beats are supposed to work. But this is another one that you could plot on, that you could like mark out on a plot chart. Like she literally rejects the call at one point early on in the movie when they invite her out, and she says no. Like she has the older guide in Loria. Like it just is, it's another one where you kind of know every beat that this movie is going to.
It's a hero's journey.
Big time. And so to have him name check it that directly is really fun.
Yep. They also, the same article says, it's talking about how this is like a high school movie, but as much as it's about like witchcraft and the theme of witches that was really prevalent at the time, it says, if anything, the movie was a spiritual extension of Carrie and The Breakfast Club, two films that tackled the social stratification of high school, and Heathers, a dark comedy that turned wealth into a blood sport. So like, I think that all of the things that we're responding to and did respond to at the time were super intentional by the writer and by the director, Andy Fleming. Both of them were aiming for what we responded to in it really intentionally.
It is. We've watched a lot of high school movies.
Yes.
And most of them aren't. No, that's not true. And some of them are high school movies, and some of them are what if high school movie, but. And this is obviously a what if high school movie, but. And so thinking about all of those different themes that come up, even down to like, in just about every one of them that we've chosen anyway, maybe not every one of them, but in so many of them, how they talk about self-harm and suicide, says so much about the era that it was made.
I mean, it's really matter-of-factly stated that, you know, Sarah tried to kill herself before she came to LA.
Yeah, and they're kind of like, that's a scene where I really actually like Nancy, because she says it, and then Nancy, like, she jokingly says punk rock, but it's not in like it's not like in a teasing or like mean way at that point. It's kind of like in a, okay, like that's fine. Like,
and I think she sees something in Sarah in that moment. Yeah. Like relatable to her situation.
Yeah.
That like, desperation.
Until Nancy asks for all the power of metal and starts like, you know, making people fall out of windows and think that their families have died tragically in plane crashes. I really love Nancy. She's that's
what makes her a bad guy.
Like truly. And like that scene especially, she's just so like
and she puts her arm around her, and it kind of like they walk off. That's right after Neve Campbell, Bonnie says, you did it the right way.
Yeah, exactly. You did it the right way. And like the way that she approaches her when she's watching Chris play football, it's right before this, where they kind of like take her in. She's really sweet there and just kind of like open and honest. She says like, you know, Chris spreads a disease I know from personal experience. Yeah. She's like, she just, I think of all four of them, she weirdly feels the most like an actual person, like a real person in this movie.
I would say that I think the other two feel like real people. I think that to me, Nancy feels like she has a compassion that the other two lack, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
And like,
yeah,
teen girls that have no compassion are also realistic. But yeah, I know what you mean.
It's so funny that Bonnie's problem in this movie is that she gets
She's
hot
not
and then is
enough.
conceited.
Yeah.
It's like Nancy kills her stepfather, he deserves it, and then becomes so power hungry that she starts killing people and running red lights and whatever. Like, Rochelle is dealing with straight up, and I don't want to, now I feel like I'm minimizing what Bonnie was going through with her scars, but like,
no, but I think part of it is that it's Neve Campbell. Like, I texted you right when this movie started, or when you started it, that like the funniest thing to me in this movie is they try to make Neve Campbell not hot in the beginning by giving her like greasy hair and layering lots of black clothing on her. And I'm like, Neve Campbell is,
it's just not
Neve Campbell.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work.
The difference, that's the other thing too, is that she shows up with her after her scars have gone away, and the only difference is that like her hair is clean and it's very much she's all that. They took her glasses off and now everybody knows she's hot.
Yeah, she's not wearing as many layers, and she brushed her hair. Like, that's the only difference.
And it turns her into an asshole, but it's also like she's also not that bad.
Yeah.
Like,
she's the only time she gets really awful is in the sequence at the end where all four of them kind of come at her, you know.
Right,
and it's because she doesn't want this newfound
Nancy to slit her throat, or also to lose God.
Well, she doesn't want I feel like we're supposed to believe that the reason that she goes along with Nancy at the end is because she doesn't want to lose what she's gained. You know, she doesn't want to go back. Yeah. I mean, exactly. So I think we should talk a little bit about Rochelle and Rachel True, the actor that played her. Just because, you know, her whole conflict is racism, right? Which is a real thing, obviously.
Yes.
But I do think it's interesting. I read a couple of interviews with her, with the actor. And, you know, the racism didn't quite end at the movie, unfortunately.
Right.
So I just want to kind of put this on people's radar that, like, where is it? Here we go. So she's talking about how the four of them were treated after the movie came out. And she was left out of a lot of stuff. She was left out a lot of publicity. She said there's a publicity junket that they were only going to take the other three girls to. And she said at the time, 20 years ago, she said, I was like, oh, it's me. It must be me. And now I realize it wasn't me. It was marketing. They didn't really think it was going to get a black audience, is my guess. That would never happen today. If you have four leads in a movie, you will take all four leads.
Yeah. There's no way to, like, what's crazy about that is how overt, like, what could they have said at the time that wasn't just, we don't want to bring the black lead?
Yeah.
Like, how did they justify it then?
Well, they didn't. But basically, she did eventually get added to the junket because the other three girls said, you need to bring her.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then the next year, Fairuza, Robin, and Nev were all in the MTV Movie Awards, and she was not. And she says, granted, those girls had all worked more than me. At the time, I just said, oh, it's probably because Fairuza's known and Nev is on a TV show. I'm kind of 50-50 on it. It's also that they were white. Like,
yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's you can't. And it's like, yeah, they did work more. And probably that's also because they were white. Like, it's not.
Yeah. No, it was also. And I read. Wait, one more thing. She said when they did the read through, she had a scene with her parents, upper middle class dodgy parents. We shot it, but it ended up being cut from the film, which I was a little bummed about because I was like, wait, all the other girls get parents. I don't get parents.
Just gonna say, we see everybody else's home life.
And she says, and this is 20 years ago. So then I said, listen, you're black and you're in the movie. That's pretty good already. So, yeah.
And I read that when they were casting this movie, they didn't say we want 3 white leads and 1 black lead.
No, she was supposed to be a white anorexic. That was going to be her problem.
And then when they cast Rachel True, they rewrote it. And it's like, on the one hand, it's like, well, yeah, that is something that, especially in a school like that with those kinds of students, it is very likely that that is something she would have encountered, and that would have been an issue for her at a school like that, right? Especially her being, it seems, the only Black student at that school.
Yep.
Which in the real world might also have been pretty similar. Yeah. So it's not that, but it is also like, oh, so now that you've cast a Black actor, her whole story comes down to that one characteristic. So it is like a kind of mixed bag there.
Yeah.
Of like, well, thank you for not totally ignoring the fact that you're like, there's only one black student at the school, right. but also,
you know, it's like, oh, is that the only problem that she could have possibly had?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just thought it was sad and also not surprising that there was a little bit of that in the real world too.
It like weirdly bums me out that she feels bad for, because there's you see Christine Taylor's progression, and in the first scene where her hair is falling out, Rochelle's kind of like, cool. Like,
yeah.
She's like a little shocked by it, but she doesn't seem super remorseful. But in the scene where you find Christine Taylor sobbing her name is Laura Lizzie, which is such a good Mean Girls name. Laura's like sobbing in the shower, and she looks like she's lost so much of her hair, and it's like patchy and it looks painful. And you see that Rochelle feels remorse for her. And I'm kind of like,
yeah, I know.
But also fuck that girl. But her wording is, when she asks for, when they, you know, make their little coven, her wording is something like allow me to, I forget exactly what the wording is, but it's like, it's basically like, I want to feel bad for this girl who hates me. And and so that's what happens. Like, yeah, that's how that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, I like the fact, I hate that this happened to Rachel True, but I like the fact that she's pretty outspoken about it and has been when talking about Charmed. So we brought up that Charmed has like the same font and the same song. She said, Rachel True said, I have a love-hate thing with Charmed because that's clearly a Kraft ripoff. They used the same song and the same font. Also, leave it to Aaron Spelling to make them all sisters so they didn't even have to have an ethnic character.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Not wrong.
I think I just thought that everybody knew and was like, the Charmed thing is crazy because I think in my head, because they use the theme song, because it's so obviously, I don't think I thought of it as a ripoff. I thought of it as like
an homage or
yeah. Like that somehow, I didn't actively think this, but that somehow the Kraft was like involved, that like the creators of the Kraft were somehow involved with it.
Nope. There's definitely some
but then how
feelings.
Do you use the same theme song?
I know.
And then be like, no, it's not. It's not a ripoff.
Yep.
So crazy. It's another incredible soundtrack. While
we're
talking
my
about
God.
The theme song.
It is so good. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Go for it.
So Tomorrow Never Knows, which is it's an Our Lady Peace. It's a cover. So we have a history of appreciating a good cover.
Yes, we do.
On this show, back to our Yellow Jackets days, which we'll be getting back to
someday, soon.
But hopefully. We will. But we will.
It's coming back. They're writing. They're writing away.
So there's the Our Lady Peace cover that is great. But then it's just to run through, and then there's also, of course, the Morrissey Fuck That Guy. There's the Smiths cover by Love Spit Love, which in my head is because of this movie, because I got to this movie when I was so young. It was before I even knew who the Smiths were. This is the version of this song for me.
Yeah. No, I kind of agree with you there.
It's so good. But then just to run through, and then there's also a Peter Gabriel cover, I Have the Touch. So there are 3 great, really great covers in this. And I'm picky about covers, but I think they're all fantastic. But it's Our Lady Peace, Sponge, Letters to Cleo, Matthew Sweet, Juliana Hatfield, Jewel, Space Hog. Like, it is just, it's crazy.
It's a great soundtrack.
It's so good and it's so 90s.
It's basically like, as I've been working in the studio while I'm at this artist residency, all of my music has been very 90s oriented. I feel like I've basically been listening to like the Pump Up the Volume soundtrack and the Craft soundtrack kind of nonstop.
They're so good. You got to throw Empire Records in there. It's also perfect.
Yeah.
It's also, if you just run through the titles, I read the artists, but I'm just looking at them straight down, and it's Tomorrow Never Knows, I Have the Touch, All This and Nothing, Dangerous Type, How Soon Is Now, Dark Secret, Witch's Song, Jump Into the Fire, Under the Water, Warning, Spastica, The Horror, and then I think this is an original composition for the movie Bells, Books, and Candles by Revel Graham or Graham Revel, which is I think it's Graham Revel. It's just like, you know how we said that Garden State, that Zach Braff sent that soundtrack along with the script, and that was a big part of it. I feel like if you found that out for this movie as well, you'd be like, yeah, obviously.
Yeah,
like,
no,
the whole
totally.
movie is in that soundtrack.
Yeah, exactly. No, the soundtrack, it's not to the point where it saves the movie like it kind of does in Garden State, but it feels like it's kind of inextricable from it.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
There's a couple of, so did you know the alternate casting for this movie? The people that were considered for the parts of Sarah?
I looked a little bit, but not a lot, and I'd love to hear more.
So
wait,
there were,
let's do that again. No, tell me more.
there were three big ones. Angelina Jolie was considered. She did Foxfire
for
Sarah. All of these I think were for Sarah. I could be wrong, but that was what I read. Angelina Jolie. Another person that came in was Scarlett Johansson, who was 12 at the time. Alicia Silverstone was another one. She had just shot Clueless, but it hadn't come out yet. All of them were mostly scheduling conflicts, I think, for the reasons that they didn't end up in it. But
wow, I'm spinning out because I think, what was the movie that Angelina Jolie?
She did Foxfire instead. Oh, yes.
That we watched, and they were like, she was too good. Like, she would have out.
Yeah.
Oh, Empire Records. Wasn't she in the
I think it was Empire Records. Yep.
For Liv's part, maybe?
Yep.
But she was like too.
Yeah, she was too intense.
And I kind of feel like that would have been the case here. Like, if you had told me she auditioned for Nancy.
Yes.
But that might be because we have her in hindsight, and I know her as the woman who drinks her like partner's blood and stuff.
Yes.
So,
yes, and carried around Billy Bob Thornton's blood in a vial. Yeah.
Yeah, and like,
but also Girl Interrupted. So,
and the Girl
yeah.
So that's hard to say.
But go ahead.
I'm just working through these in my head. I can't even think about Scarlett Johansson because, like you said, she was 12. I don't know what that would have been. And I think Scarlett Johansson is kind of like blank slate-y to me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really have a feeling about her as an actor in any direction, so whatever. I think Alicia Silverstone is an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
I think
it could have worked,
she's
I guess.
so Cher in my head that it's hard.
Yeah.
But I really love her. I think she's really like charming, and I think she can, because the thing with Sarah is that she's like kind of a loner. She's a little more introverted. She's like less like,
she's kind of a plain girl.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And so I think I could see Alicia Silverstone doing that, but she's just so Cher to me.
Well, the reason that it ended up being Robin Tunney, did you read this? That the casting director needed somebody to come in and read with the girls they'd already casted.
No, but I love stories like this.
Yeah. So the casting director, I think it's Pam Dixon, knew Robin Tunney and asked her to come in to read against the girls that they'd already been testing.
Just to be there.
Mm-hmm. And then when everyone saw the test, they said, oh, wow, wait, maybe
I wonder if
her.
Pam Dixon had it in her head, because you hear so many stories like this where a casting director or a producer or somebody will have someone in mind that they know that people won't consider, and so they do it sneaky like this. I think that's also how Ben Schwartz got Sonic the Hedgehog. I think they were like,
that from? Oh,
I'm
God.
a big Ben Schwartz fan.
Not a big Sonic the Hedgehog fan?
No, I don't care. But that story just stuck out to me as like, I'm almost positive that like whoever wrote the movie maybe brought him in just because they needed someone to like,
yeah,
and
like that type.
Well, hold on a minute. Yeah.
Apparently she came in to read with a pixie cut, obviously, because she had she'd shaved her head for Empire Records. So the ending of this movie with Nancy in the mental hospital in restraints, being medicated, and talking about how she's flying. How did you feel about the ending? That bit, then or now, or both?
Then at the time, it didn't really make like I just don't think, I think it feels like such a punchline almost, or at least did at the time. And now I was thinking about how unfair it is. I know that we're supposed to think that like her quest for power and what she did with it and all is outsized compared to the other girls, and that's why she gets punished with a life in like her whole life is like done and gone now. Like she has like her brain is fully broken, and the other girls just get their power taken away, and Sarah does not at all. So
at the time, I didn't think anything of it, really. I was like, I was so, I think, afraid of what Nancy became because I had experienced such cruelty at the hands of other girls that I was like,
you're like, oh God, could you imagine if they also had supernatural powers?
Yeah, exactly. So in my brain at the time, I would think I was probably like, fuck that girl, like put her in the psych hospital forever.
As a kid, she just feels like the antagonist. She feels like the villain in this movie when you're,
but
a person,
now as an adult, thinking about the history of women being punished for various transgressions by being put in mental hospitals by their husbands, or
which
by society,
which
we've talked about. Yep. And the fact that, bringing up Angelina Jolie in Girl Interrupted, she is basically medicated into, or actually not medicated, given in the movie so much ECT that she is basically unable to function anymore. There's a Vulture article about the legacy of this movie that says that Nancy ends up crazed and strapped to a bed in a mental institution is a painful reminder that for women like her who refuse to fit any mold of femininity, society affords them power is illusory and second chances are an impossibility. That Nancy's fate is such a prosaic retrograde handling of a mentally ill, intensely iconoclastic women's narrative undercuts the compassion of the rest of the film. I like to imagine a different ending, one in which the coven stays together and Nancy finds hope within their sisterhood and a better use for her abilities. So that is kind of how I look at it now. But also the fact that, so many women over hundreds of years have either been forced into institutions or, in the original sort of witch hysteria, like burned.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
hunted.
Yeah. It's not the most, it's like, it's an unsatisfying ending, and it is a failing of this movie, I think, but it's not totally like outlandish at all.
Exactly. Apparently the writer, the Peter Filardi, I think it's Peter, that was one of the co-writer of this movie, had a different ending originally.
Oh.
And he will not talk about it.
Oh.
He will not tell people because he doesn't want to sort of besmirch the movie itself. Like, he's not unhappy with the movie, but he does say, like, the original ending was different. I've never really gone into the detail of what the original ending was. It was just different.
Do you think he kills her? Do you think Nancy dies at the end of his...
I don't know. So what he says is, and apparently he really doesn't like talking about it, but he says, so let's see. Well, Chris always died, and it was just very different. He hesitates. I don't really get into it because there's no real sense. It is what it is. I always, like in a movie, having two different children, you love them both for different reasons. But I would have never wanted to be hard on the girls in the final analysis in any way thematically. I don't know what that means, but there was a different ending in the original idea. So I don't know if maybe it's that he found the ending harsh on her. the way he talks about this movie and the way he talks about coming up with the ideas in this movie, he seems extremely sympathetic to the women in this movie and their place in society. He talks about how this came from his his experience and wanting to show women as empowered. So I don't know. I mean, I'm totally guessing, but to me, maybe that ending was not his idea.
Huh. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because he talks so much about how he wanted to empower the women in this movie. And that definitely does not. That takes away the power at the end.
It's funny that he says that, and then only one of them is left with any power at the end, and one of them is left institutionalized for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
I also can't help but draw the parallel between this and a movie that we might watch at some point, Return to Oz. It's Fruza Balk. It's like one of her first, it might be her first movie, but it's definitely her first lead. She's young, and she plays Dorothy Gale after coming back from her first trip to Oz. It's called Return to Oz for a reason. And her family thinks she's crazy for talking about going to Oz and not thinking it was a dream. And they send her to a hospital for ECT, and something happens which triggers sending her back to Oz. But it is.
I haven't seen that, and I do think I do need to watch it at some point.
I think it's like, it's a weird 80s movie, but also there's some stuff that is actually like worth talking about, I think. So at some point we will.
Yeah.
Especially because there are all these parallels.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's worth also linking to this Vulture article, because it does talk about, there's a quote from it that says, it taps into the primal American fear of female power and what happens when women are alone together, forming hothouse bonds that seem to only occur in adolescence in ways that are both profound and contradictory, liberating and limiting. So
do we want to talk a little bit about the this sequel? I guess I think sequel is.
I think we should talk about it a little bit. Before we do that, I really quickly want to bring up the very small queer undertones in this movie. The idea of the very close friendships these four women have, and the fact that Fruza Balk's character is canonically bisexual.
Is she?
So this is from a Vice article. I've read way too many articles about this movie. But it says that it's implied that she's bisexual. She says, quote unquote, "I love a woman in uniform." When she's talking about, I know. But also when the four try light as a feather, stiff as a board, there's the whole joke about,
this is so funny. These are the scenes I think of as like what makes me like her so much and makes me feel like she's a real person and just kind of talks the way that like girls will talk. But
there's a hand gesture in that.
She says, it's not even just a hand gesture. She says, Sarah's like, you put your fingers under her, and she says, you put your fingers where?
Yeah.
Which is so, I just think that's like a funny.
Yeah. But
but
she's overtly sexual in this movie in a way that the others aren't also.
But listen, we by now know I want to read bisexual undertones into any movie or queer undertones into any movie that we watch. And this movie is 100% a queer awakening for many women. I wouldn't necessarily call that this for this movie for me.
No, neither.
But I know that it is. But I think there's an argument to be made for Nancy's queerness. But I take it more that like the whole thing with her is that she's a little more open, a little more wild, a little more sexual.
Yeah.
And that's what because that hand gesture, not to be whatever, but like, that's like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
But also this is 1996. Like that was pretty radical for the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like just the way that she's behaving and the joking about it. Like it wasn't super common, let's say.
No, not at all. But I don't know that, I guess, I don't know. I just.
Yeah. Well, some people think that she's canonically bisexual, which I think is Interesting.
I guess it's the canon part of it that I am pushing against. I think you can read her. I think you can read queerness in her character.
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder if you ask Andrew, what's his name? Zimmerman? Andrew.
Excuse me.
It's not Andrew Zimmerman.
So there's the director, Andrew Fleming, and there's the writer, Peter Filardi.
I would guess if you asked Peter Filardi and Andrew
Fleming.
God, I would guess if you asked, I wonder if you asked Peter Filardi and Andrew Fleming about whether or not she's canonically bisexual,
probably
what they would
not,
say.
But yeah, I think it's one of those, can we bring up the dissertation? It's one that in that dissertation would be sort of referred to in that realm of movies that queer people have read queerness into.
Mm-hmm. Which is important. I'm pushing against that because I think it can take away from the like inherent sort of like power is a little over the top kind of word, but like agency and like empowering nature of reading queerness into spaces where it wasn't originally.
Sure.
And so to give the movie that of being like, actually we meant it all along, is a little bit of J.K. Rowling trying to pretend that Hermione was black. That she wrote Hermione to be black, as opposed to black readers saying Hermione is one of us.
That's fair. And I mean, that is, the dissertation that I'm bringing up, if you're not a regular listener of ours and just found us because you love the craft, is by Lynn Stahl. It's a dissertation called Unhappy Medium, Filmic Tomboy Narrative and Queer Feminist Spectatorship.
And it's fantastic.
It's great. It is more, I think you're right, that it's more being read into by queer people than originally meant to be queer. Mm-hmm. Because The Craft is sort of a queer movie, but made that way by queer people.
Right.
I guess we should talk a little bit about the sequel, which came out, I think, in 2020. Oh, before we do that, real quick, fun fact. Can I throw you a fun fact?
Yeah, throw me a fun fact.
Okay, so one of the producers of this movie, a man named Doug Wick. The
Witches of Dugwick.
Yes. Doug Wick.
The Bitches of Eastwick is funny.
It's great. Apparently he brought his daughters to the showing that they did at the Hollywood Cemetery a few years ago. His daughters, who are now in their 20s at this point. They were the little girls on the bus. His daughters.
Oh,
the little blonde girls that are staring at them.
That Nancy gives the dirty look to over her cool tiny little sunglasses.
Yep. Those were the daughters of the producer who he brought to the screening in their 20s.
That's so nice.
Yeah, just a fun fact.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. We'll talk about the reboot. I feel like I don't know too much what to say about it because neither of us have actually watched it. You said the last 10 minutes. I read the trailer.
A full synopsis of the movie and I watched the last 10 minutes.
Okay.
So there will be spoilers here.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I don't think most people are probably watching the reboot.
Or if they or if they would have watched it by now is my guess.
Yeah. Wait. I'm sorry. I know I keep interrupting, but there's a few little things that I wanted to make sure to mention.
Mm-hmm.
There was an article for E! Online that says, and I don't know if this is true, but there's a deleted scene where Sarah goes to visit Nancy in the hospital.
Oh.
In an attempt to heal her after the fight scene.
Huh.
Do with that what you will. I think it's interesting. I don't know if it would have been better or worse to have it in there, but
I don't like the word attempt. I think if she went and healed her, that might have been actually cool to see.
Yeah.
But my guess is the scene would have been she goes to heal her and it doesn't work because Nancy was so
far gone
and out of line for attempting to use Manal's power for evil or whatever.
Yeah. It's from one of those 25 bewitching secrets about the craft.
Oh. It's cute that they're watching Bewitched at one point, by the way.
Yes, it
that's
is.
very cute.
I love that whole slumber party vibe. The light as a feather, stiff as a board.
Yeah. Despite the fact that they're all 45-year-old women, they do a really good job of
the teen slumber party.
Yeah.
Did you play light as a feather, stiff as a board?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Did it work?
No, of course not.
I feel like it did once for me.
It didn't.
It kind of did. I will always be convinced that when I was at summer camp at 12 years old and played light as a feather, stiff as a board, you can't tell me it didn't work. We didn't raise her that high, but I'm telling you,
but you got her off the ground.
We did.
All those little slumber party games. Did you ever do the one where you lay on your back with your legs up and somebody presses down on them and then you tell a whole big story and then you drop your legs and it feels like your whole body falls into a grave?
No. Did you do the one where you crack the egg on the head and
the yolk drips down? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
All that stuff. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. But I will go to my grave saying that the light as a feather, stiff as a board worked when I was like 12. I don't believe in a lot of things, but I believe in that.
Believe in the power of teen girls.
Yeah, I
do.
You
put it that way.
I do. Okay, now I'm done with my interruptions. Let's talk about the reboot. Came out in 2020, directed by Zoe Lister-Jones, called The Craft Legacy.
It feels to me, just based on what I read and what I saw, that it's somebody who really loved the movie trying to right some of its wrongs. Mm-hmm. So the cast is more diverse. Mm-hmm. The issues they deal with seem more like societal and less about, not that they're not in the craft, but there's less infighting in the group.
Yeah.
It does. The end of the movie is the four girls coming together to defeat an outside antagonist, which I love. I love that. I think what I wanted the craft to be is that in the first place. So there's no scene of one of the girls being turned on by the other ones because she gets to whatever.
Yeah.
The thing that I really wanted, and also David Duchovny is the bad guy in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. But the thing that I want to talk about, which is kind of a major spoiler, is at the very end. So the lead girl,
Lily, I think her name is.
What's Lily? Yeah.
In the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. She's adopted. And I don't know how much you know about her birth mother throughout the movie, mm-hmm. but you do know she's adopted.
Okay.
And she goes at the very end to visit her. She's going to visit someone. Her friends are like, big day. And her adopted mom drops her off and she walks into what is clearly a mental hospital, or a hospital anyway. Mm-hmm. And she says, like, here's who I'm looking for. And they say, what's your relation? And then she opens a door and Fairuza Balk, Nancy, is sitting on a bed. And she says, can I help you? And she says, my name's Lily, whatever, I'm your daughter, or you're my mom. And so it turns out that she's still, when I read that Fairuza shows up at the end as her mother, I was like, oh, that's so nice. You find out that she's been like rehabilitated.
Nope.
But no, she had a baby while hospitalized, and then her baby was taken from her and adopted out. Obviously, like, if you have a baby in a hospital, I think probably that is what should happen. I'm not saying that Lily should grow up in a hospital,
right?
But I was really hopeful when I read that we were going to get a little Nancy redemption, but no, which is quite a bummer.
Yeah.
She's also the only one who appears in the
reboot. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a sequel because Nancy's in it.
No, I'm sorry. Not reboot. Yeah.
No, but I think you're right. I think I've often read it like described as a reboot,
but it's
a sequel because of that scene.
Yeah. Yeah. The article that I read about it in BuzzFeed was talking about how, and this was written by a woman who loved the original movie, mm-hmm. But also understood its problems. That it feels like it's trying really, really hard, and that it's got like sort of I think the pejorative way of saying it would be that it's like the woke version or whatever. But also that she makes the point in this article that like and this is a quote, for a lot of Gen Zers, that wokeness isn't empty symbolism or virtue signaling, but a mandatory state of being. It's not weird or forced for them to have a trans best friend or be trans themselves because there's a trans character, or take a stand against rape culture. It's just how things are. So I think, maybe the 40-year-olds looking at it and saying, oh, it's a little too woke, it's a little too try hard or whatever, are missing the point that like for Gen Z, that's sincere.
Right.
So
it also feels, just from the little bit that I watched, that last like fight scene feels really light.
Yes.
It feels very like, even the effects seem a little silly in a way that felt intentional to me. Like I don't really know how to explain the vibe of it, but it just felt like lighter, like a much lighter movie, which I kind of like.
Yeah, and that's brought up in this as well. She says, like, you know, the magic feels more fantastical and less dark and esoteric. And it certainly doesn't go into the dark depths that The Craft does. It's fun with just the slightest hint of spook around the edges, whereas The Craft had more bite and horror and real danger. So she agrees with you.
Good. But it feels like a movie that just maybe isn't, even though it is a sequel to a movie that I love very much, it just feels like maybe it's not really for me, and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. That I agree with. Fun fact about Rachel True, just to throw this in there. She released her own tarot card deck in 2020.
I did see that she's like a really serious tarot reader.
Yeah,
like
she is. She is.
Like made a career of it.
Yeah. Love that.
I kind of love that.
I know.
What's our Jersey reference?
Oh God. I mean the Barnes and Noble that I was looking at witchcraft books in was in Paramus.
Okay, count? I don't think our Jersey reference can be that we've been in New Jersey. I don't know.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Now I'm just Googling where these actors were born.
I know. The Roger Ebert review of this from the Time is not very positive, but it mentions this is some of his classic sort of sarcasm. He says, the teenager named Sarah decides to go to school even though she doesn't have her uniform yet. Her stepmother drops her off at a Catholic high school in a posh section of Los Angeles. But he says, her family move into a vast crumbling old mansion overgrown with vines and apparently set within decaying wetlands. Where exactly in Los Angeles are there Gothic mansions in Bayou country? He's just kind of like shitting on the realism. That's a good point.
That house is nuts, by the way.
I know.
What do her parents do for a living?
I don't remember. But I do know that it's leaking in such a way that you would not move into it before that roof was fixed.
Well, it seems that they've never visited the place because he seems surprised.
Yeah.
I have a connection.
Okay, good. What is it?
The first time all four women reunited was in Cherry Hill, New Jersey in 2019. There have been other times where 2 or 3 of them had gotten together. But the Monster Mania convention, which is a huge monster convention, horror convention in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, South Jersey, even better, proper South Jersey. Their first time together since the movie was 2019 in Cherry Hill for Monster Mania convention. Does that count?
That's weaker than I would like, but
well, what else you got? You give me one.
So Natalie Portman of Garden State, not of the Garden State, but of the movie Garden State, apparently went to a bachelor party where everyone had to bring their guilty pleasure movies, and she brought The Craft.
You think that's
not better? No, it's not. But it's,
okay, it's just another.
It's just another option.
Okay,
they're all pretty weak.
Is this the worst we've done?
I think it might be.
No, I guess we'll scrap this episode. I really feel like, are we missing something obvious?
Probably.
Do you think the snake man, he's probably from Jersey, I'll bet.
He lives in the Pine Barrens.
Yeah, exactly. Man, hold on. I know we're done. I know it's time to wrap up. But when that snake man just wanders into her house and says, I found this out back, do you want it?
It's so good. It's so funny and offbeat and strange.
It's just like including snakes is scary, so they do that in this movie.
Yeah.
Because when he shows up later, right before he gets hit by the car, they hit him with a car. He's like, I found another snake. You want it? Like, he's just walking around with like snakes and a message handing her snakes. It's so funny.
No
I found
idea
this
what
out
that
back. Do you
is.
want it?
Oh my God. I know. I laughed really hard.
Oh, it's so silly.
Maybe, okay, so for our listeners, that's your task.
Oof.
Find us a New Jersey connection for The Craft. I know you can do it.
We have faith in you.
Yes.
I think it's pretty important that the first time all 4 of them reunited was in New Jersey.
I think that's a bit of a stretch, but I'll take it.
Wow.
I mean, it's important,
you just don't
but
like
it's
that
not.
you just don't like that it's South Jersey.
It's not a South Jersey thing.
If I said they fucking reunited at the Glen Rock, that's all you'd be talking about.
I mean, that would be a great place to reunite and do some rituals. I think that would be a great place to do some.
Exactly. I'll bet you do. Yeah, I'll bet.
That'd be pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't be surprised me if it's been used in witch rituals. It's a glacial erratic. It's important.
It is. Don't bring this here. Don't bring this here to my podcast.
Whose podcast? I'll bring my Glen Rock ness to whatever I want. Thank you very much. Okay, I guess we should wrap up now that we're devolving into this. So, The Craft, we did it. What are we watching next week? Well, first of all, we're taking a week off. My fault, sorry, but I'm going to be driving all weekend to Wyoming. So we're going to take a week off, but then we'll be back. And what are we watching when we get back?
So we're taking off the week of 10/16. We won't be here, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're taking the 17th off. We'll be back on the 24th.
And we're taking an absolute left turn. I'm not even going to pretend there's a connection here. In fact, the only reason we're watching it this month, or the only the reason we're watching it this month is so I can kind of justify us watching it. Mm-hmm. We're watching a movie I love so much. It's a pretty recent movie. Weirdly, it's one of my comfort movies, which is a weird way to sell this movie. But it's a horror movie, which I know, Jodie, you're not thrilled by, but it's got so much more going on that you are not even going to care that it's a horror movie, I promise.
I mean, I watched Scream for you, so... And I did like it, so I guess it's okay.
I will be surprised if you don't like this movie. It's called Scare Me. It's by Josh Rubin, who's one of my favorite. He's an improviser and a comedian and also a writer, and he writes a lot of horror. This was his first feature-length movie. He wrote it, directed it, produced it. He stars in it, and it's
so he's Zach Braff.
Oh, there's our connection. That's how I'm connecting it. You're right. He's the Zach Braff of this movie.
Oh, don't do that to him.
And his character is a horror writer. He has rented a cabin to do some writing. The person who has rented the cabin next door to him or down the road from him, whatever, is also a horror writer. She's more successful. And the premise of the movie is electricity goes out. She comes over to his cabin and is like, let's hang out and tell each other scary stories.
Okay.
And that's the movie.
Cool. I'm excited.
And I love it so much.
I think I trust you, even though you're more of a snake person than a...
It's not that kind of horror movie.
Oh, good.
And I just think it's fantastic. I wrote a really long, very head up my own butt review about this movie and how much I love it for a podcast network I used to work for, that you can find on the internet. I
thought you were going to say you wrote a research paper about it.
Oh no, I was already
out of that.
I was done with, teaching at this point. But I basically used as an excuse to, anyway, I won't link to it until after we talk about the podcast. Cause it's, there aren't any spoilers really, but there are spoilers about the themes in the movie.
Yeah.
I would like you and our listeners to go into this, reading as little as you can about it.
Okay.
It's lovely. You can watch it pretty much anywhere.
Oh, Aya Cash is in it. I like her.
Aya Cash is in it. It's got a small cast. There are a couple other people that we can talk about who are in it. Josh also did one of the podcasts that I worked for at the time, so I can share that interview too after we watch the movie. He's lovely. This movie's great. He's great. I love everything he does. I'm obsessed. I love it.
Nice. Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime.
You can watch it on Amazon Prime, and I think if you subscribe to Shudder, let's see if that's still true. Yeah. So you can get a 7-day free trial for Shudder, which is also, if you are a horror fan, it's a really cool streaming service. They have tons of stuff you can't find other places, but you can get a 7-day free trial and watch it there, which you just absolutely should. So I'll link to Shudder. And again, you can watch it on Amazon Prime or a few other places, but they're the two main ones. And it's, even if you have to pay for it, I think it's well worth your rental.
Okay. Well, I will watch it on Prime probably. Awesome.
Oh, I'm going to go watch it right now. And where can folks find us?
They can find us at WatchersPodNJ on Instagram and Twitter. I'm still calling it that. And they can find me at Jodie_Mim on Instagram, JODIE_MIM. And they can email us at watcherspodnj@gmail.com and tell us, is the Container Store bit going to stay in? Because they can tell us about their favorite containers. Okay. And they can tell us if they would rather hold a rat or a roach. And they can also tell us if they found a Jersey connection to the craft.
Yes.
Those are the three things.
Yep.
Tell us about your love of the Container Store. Would you hold a rat or a roach? And how do we connect the craft to New Jersey?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Scare Me's going to be a tricky one too, but I'll bet I can do it.
We'll figure it out. Awesome.
Well, we haven't been able to say this for a little while, but we'll, I guess we could have said it this week too, but it's especially appropriate to say we'll see you in the woods.
Ooh. I'm Look.
I'm in a wood.
Yeah. I really feel like we should start sharing what our backgrounds are on Instagram too. Like, I never want to be photographed, but we do a little behind the scenes. Andrea and I both choose to Zoom backgrounds that relate somehow to our movie. Just for us. Nobody else sees it.
Yeah. But maybe we'll start sharing.
Okay. We will see you in the woods. Bye.
Bye.